Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to begin. May I have your attention, please? Our program will start shortly. I would first like to remind all of you to keep your microphone at mute while the program is running, so as to minimize sound distractions for everyone's benefit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the organizing committee of the International Biology Symposium 2020, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. My name is Ernie Eileen binti Rizlan Ross, and I will be your MC for today's event. It is our privilege to have you here with us today. We are now ready to begin the proceedings of the symposium. We hope you will find the program we have lined up for you to be fruitful and engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, we start our program with the national anthem and UiTM official song. Ladies and gentlemen, to continue with this morning's program, I would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Fazrul Azim to recite the Dua so as to pray for blessings from God Almighty for this gathering today.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, Ya Rahim, praise be to God, the Lord of the world. Peace and blessing be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, and for those who follow his example till the judgment day. Allahumma ya Allah, on this blessed morning, in conjunction with International Biology Symposium in Biosim 2020, we beseech and grateful towards you in favor of all the infinite blessing to us, your humble servant, to live in safe and prosperous life. We seek your blessing for flawless progress of this event from the beginning till the end. We seek your guidance to steer clear of events that will determine the progress of this event. Ya Latif, Ya Rahman, please bless us with your taufiq and hidayah. Please guide University Technology Mara to greatness, peace, glory, and prosperity in world and hereafter. Make us a responsible intellectual, granted us with a valuable knowledge that will be beneficial to mankind in order to gain your baratillah. Make us your righteous servant that will follow your commands and neglect the sinful act. Please forgive us for our wrongdoing. Ya Munzil al-Barakats, bestow peace to our valuable country, Malaysia. Preserve us from any threat and disaster, neither man-made nor natural disaster. And to you, Ya Allah, we ask for security and prosperity upon us, our leaders, and our country. Bestow patience in us in order to face the challenges from you. Please accept our deeds and please reward us accordingly. ربنا عليك توكلنا وإليك أبنا وإليك المصير ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Fazrul Azim, for the beautiful recitation of the Dua. Now, it is my honor to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University Technology Mara Shah Alam, Professor Dr. Haja Farida Zuraina binti Mat Yusof, to deliver her opening speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. Dear honorable speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a pleasure and honor for me to welcome you to International Biology Symposium in Biosim 2020. I'm Farida, currently the Dean at the Faculty of Applied Sciences, University Technology Mara. I especially would like to welcome our colleagues and guests coming from Malaysia and other countries. Thank you to all guest speakers for spending your time with us. It is a special privilege for me to have Prof. Dr. Farshad, Salam Prof, and Dr. Stephen Compton, who will later be joining us as our keynote speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pleased that you accepted our invitation and decided to join us today. Alhamdulillah, I am so proud to see so many participations from countries such as our neighboring country Indonesia, Iran as well as England, all in one platform despite the current circumstances of COVID-19 pandemic that hit us all around the world. The InBio Symposium organizing committee members have contributed tremendous amount of effort for the last couple of months to make this symposium possible this year. For the very first time, FSG conference is completely online. We have successfully managed the whole conference with a comprehensive online process for conference promotion, abstract and paper submission, conference registration, and other services. As a result, we have organized this symposium to discuss the truth and beauty of science, technology, advancement, and research update, while celebrating our global friendship around the theme towards sustainable research, global responses, and beyond boundaries. Making progress with implementing sustainability is vital to securing a safe future. Failure to address our current unsustainable norms is a threat to the continuation of civilization. We are gathered today for this symposium not just for the sake of knowledge, but we are here to make a difference in the world through our own research findings. The research community are encouraged to embrace an active role which is above and beyond neutral observer to become a catalyst for change. We have received exceeded target number of papers presented and total of number of people registered. The quality of technical program is world-class and the spectrum of topics is very current and broad. Hence, I hope this event could provide you a unique opportunity to meet colleagues from your own specialty area. I wish you a most fruitful day with interesting and stimulating discussions and exchange of knowledge so that we can together envisage the future of an innovative biological sciences. With that being said, enjoy your participation in InBio Symposium 2020. We hope you return next year with even more colleagues from FSG conference in 2021. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Back to you, Ernie.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Dr. Hajah Farida Zuraina. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Professor Dr. Hadaria binti Harun as the chairperson of the Virtual Colloquium series at FSG 2020 to deliver her welcoming address.
Thank you very much, Ernie. I would like to share a slide, a very simple slide. I hope you can see that. Just 1 second. Yep, can you see that?
Yes, Professor.
Oh, sorry. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished plenary speakers, keynote speakers, presenters, participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and my dearest Dean of Faculty of Applied Sciences, Professor Farida Zuraina. A very good morning. Assalamualaikum. Selamat datang. Kush Amadid. Do I say it right? And a very warm welcome to UiTM and to InBioSim 2020 from the land of Malaysia. I am Hadaria Bahrun, the chairperson for the Virtual Colloquium Series VCS at FSG 2020, Faculty of Applied Sciences, University Technology Mara, Malaysia. This morning, we are very fortunate to have two distinguished keynote speakers and 4 plenary speakers. Our keynote speakers come all the way from Iran and England. Prof. Dr. Farshad Shirazi of Shahid Beheshti University of Medical Sciences in Iran. He informed us that this is 4 o'clock in the morning in Iran. So thank you very much, Prof, for forsaking your sleep to be with us. The second keynote speaker is Dr. Steve Compton, a reader in entomology, University of Leeds, England. We are also very fortunate to have 4 plenary speakers. Dr. Muhammad Azinuddin Mohtar from FGV R&D Sendirian Berhad, Dr. Nur Wahidah Abdul Karim from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Ms. Kumari Gita Muniandi from Star Feed Mills Malaysia Sendirian Berhad, and Mr. Muhammad Nur Muhammad Isa from Malaysia Genome Institute. Now, allow me to do a quick introduction to UiTM, because I realized that some of our speakers and participants this morning come from outside of UiTM. So let me do a quick introduction. UiTM is the largest university in Malaysia. There is one main campus here in Shah Alam, and there are 13 state campuses. There are 21 satellite campuses. We have about 9,000 lecturers all over Malaysia, about 9,500 admin staff all over Malaysia, 170,000 current active students, and well over 700,000 graduates to date. We have 26 faculties. We have 9 research institutes in Malaysia currently, and these are growing. So as you can see, this is the map of Malaysia. The main campus is here in Selangor. We have at least one campus in each of the states in Malaysia, including Sabah and Sarawak. In each state, we have, except for Kedah and Perlis, we have more than one campuses. So we are a very, very big institution in Malaysia, and we have strength in number, and our faculties are very much varied. So this is the list of our faculties in UiTM. We have 26 faculties. We have from the business accountancy, information management, and so on and so forth. You have all this, and I would like to pay attention and would like to introduce you especially to Faculty of Applied Sciences, who is the host of today's event. Now, the Faculty of Applied Sciences is led by our gracious Dean, Dr. Farida Zuraina. There are 4 schools in the Faculty of Applied Sciences. We have the School of Biology, who is our organizer for this morning's Symposium. We have School of Physics and Material Studies, School of Chemistry and Environment, and School of Industrial Technology. So that's a little bit about UiTM. So I would like to, by way of introduction, introduce you to our virtual colloquium series, VCS at FSG 2020. The Office of Industry, Community and Alumni Network, ICANN of FSG UiTM, has taken an excellent initiative to register the virtual symposium at FSG as part of the virtual colloquium series 2020 under the University Transformation Division program. Now, this VCS at FSG 2020 is an e-conference series using virtual platforms comprising of 4 different symposia in the areas of biology, chemistry and environment, physics and materials, and industrial technology to match the 4 different schools in the Faculty of Applied Sciences, UiTM. Now, let me introduce you to this morning's event, which is the International Biology Symposium in Biosim 2020. This is the logo of our event this morning. Today, we are witnessing and taking part in the opening of our very first virtual symposium, the Biosim 2020, organized by the School of Biology, FSG UiTM. Biosim has received extraordinary, generous support and response from many of our partners. More than 100 participants from the academia, students, researchers, and industry partners from within Malaysia and outside of Malaysia have registered in Biosim 2020. This number is far exceeding our initial estimation. 88 participants will be presenting their work in 6 parallel sessions of today. Year 2020 is certainly a year to be remembered. It will be remembered as a very, very challenging, volatile year. Since December 2019, the coronavirus, COVID-19, has been affecting 218 countries and territories around the world. It has been indeed a tough year for many. But as researchers, it is called upon us to be very creative and innovative, adapting to new norms. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically changed the world. That is undeniable. It has left countless people longing for our pre-pandemic way of life. In the past few months, everybody has been hoping to return to our normal daily activities like before. While we may not have normality, we can show our resilience to adopt and adapt to our new norm. So this is the little creature that has caused all these changes starting year 2019 and until today. Now, what is the reason for, excuse me, why is, it's shopping. Are you seeing my slides?
Yes, Prof.
Sorry, okay. The raison d'etre, the reason for being for Imbiosim 2020. Now, Imbiosim 2020 offers opportunities and new experiences to all scientists to present, discuss, and share breakthrough ideas related to biology virtually. The ultimate goal is to bring together biology scientists within multidisciplinary group. Hopefully, with the Best Presenter Award for this today's event, it would encourage the appearance of high-quality research, thus making discussions, writing techniques, and presentations more competitive and focused on the recent outstanding achievements in the field of biology and future trends and need. I would like to record my congratulations to organizing committee of Imbiosim 2020. Big thumb up for them here. Allow me to warmly applaud the organizers of this milestone event, especially Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Amina Said Muhammad, the chair, and her superb Imbiosim 2020 committee members for bravely and enthusiastically taking the monumental challenge of carrying out this electronic symposium a la MCO, Movement Control Order. Towards sustainable research, global responses beyond boundaries is the main theme for this symposium. We anticipate critically deliberated presentations ahead to fully realizing the spirit of the theme. My deep gratitude and acknowledgement on behalf of the faculty, on behalf of UiTM, I would like to record my gratitude and deep appreciation to all the members of the organizing committee and volunteers who have been working very hard for their dedication, time, and effort to make this event a success. Within a very short time of less than 3 months of this team being assembled, much success has been attained in organizing this event. So bravo to Team Imbiosim 2020. Without the generosity and dedication of all parties involved, we would not have been able to create a successful total virtual online environment to support your full participation. Here, I would like to acknowledge the Office of TNCPI UiTM for sharing with us their know-how for using this electronic platform. We had practices and rehearsals with them. Thank you, everyone, for your presence this morning, today, all of today, and for your participation. You are the most important part for the success of this symposium. So I would like to end with this slide to say terima kasih, thank you, mutasyakiram, Mamnoon, and enjoy Symposium 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Hadaria. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us two inspiring keynote speakers for the highlight of the event today. Our first keynote speaker comes all the way from Iran. It is my honor to invite Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Aminah Said Muhammad to introduce to us Professor Dr. Farshad Hussaini Shirazi.
You are muted, Dr. Min.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning to everybody. To the invited speakers, Prof. Farshad Shirazi, to the honorable invited VIPs for today, our Dean, Professor Dr. Farida and Prof. Hadaria Barun, and to all the participants today. First and foremost, as the chairperson of InBioSym 2020, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to our symposium. I am very honorable to receive such an overwhelming response from all participants. Even we received application to join our symposium yesterday. Even yesterday, there are still people who are trying and applying for me to join our symposium. I am very honored. Thank you so much from all of us, the Committee of International Biology Symposium 2020. I'm also grateful to all the speakers for their willingness to deliver their lecture. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker, Prof. Farshad. Prof. Farshad was born in Sari, Iran in 1964. In his scientific life, he acquired his Doctor in Pharmacy degree from Mashhad University of Medical Sciences, Mashhad, Iran in 1988. He has then been employed as a lecturer in Shahid Beheshti University of Medical Sciences, Pharmacy School in Tehran in the same year. That is the university that I went to visit Prof. Farshad last year in November with Dr. Diana. So Prof. Farshad, I would like to convey the greetings from Dr. Diana also. She is with us today among the participants. Okay, so I'm so happy that I am blessed that I'm able to meet Prof. Farshad first from the internet communication for publication in journal, and later on we went to visit Shahid Beheshti University in Iran. Okay, so after that, after Prof. Farshad joined SBMU, later in 1990 he moved to Cologne, Germany for a clinical pharmacology research fellowship program in drug monitoring. Okay. He has also continued in Shahid Beheshti University of Medical Sciences as lecturer until 1993 when reside in Ottawa, Canada to study at Fakulti of Medicine. In Ottawa, Prof. Farshad got his MSc from the Department of Pharmacology in 1995 and his PhD in 1998 from the Department of Cellular and Molecular Medicine. He is assigned as a full professor in Pharmacology and Toxicology, School of Pharmacy, SBMU Tehran, Iran, as well as an adjunct professor in Biotechnology, School of Pharmacy, Shahid Beheshti University, and also as adjunct professor in Medical Ethics Center, Shahid Beheshti University. He is currently the Dean of SBMU Pharmaceutical Research Center, Head of the Iranian Association of Pharmaceutical Specialists, Board of Specialists in Pharmaceutical Management, Ministry of Health, as well as Directing Committee, Poisoning and Toxicology Research Center. He has obtained more than 20 research grants and collaboration in multiple research projects. He published more than 90 scientific publications and supervised more than 50 students. I met with almost 20 students, isn't it, Diana? I saw Dr. Diana over there. Okay, hello. Those are the few of the Prof. Arshad. Okay, those are the few of the many inspiring contributions made by him in his scientific lifetime so far. Without further ado, it is my greatest pleasure to invite Prof. Dr. Syed Farshad Hossaini Shirazi to deliver his keynote lecture entitled Corona Pandemic, Experience and Lessons for the Human Being.
Thank you, Professor Sharifa. In the name of Allah, the Compassionate and the Merciful, while I'm sharing my slides, let me to express my appreciation for inviting me to this very wonderful event. I also would like to express my appreciation and somehow my surprising of the behavior of your university, your seriousness about your job and the way that you are doing your tasks. I remember when Professor Sharifa came to Iran, it was not a very favorable time. And I was thinking that they won't come at all because of the situation. But to my surprise, they were there in my office, and they were there only for a couple of hours. They have tolerated, I believe, more than 30 hours of flight in and back just for 4 or 5 hours meeting. And it was quite surprising and admirable that some people are so serious about their job and not thinking of anything else except the task and the aim that they have come to a trip for. After that, when she invited me for this meeting, I was a little bit lazy in answering her email. And she started emailing to everybody who has contributed to any paper with me to make sure that I received the email. And suddenly I got messages from all my colleagues that why you're not answering to this lady and they are inviting you for this meeting. So I did not have any other option than accepting, although it was my pleasure, great pleasure. But at the same time, it really affected me as a good example of the people who are very much serious in their job and they want to keep it successful. Very good, and God bless you, everybody. So just to save the time, allow me to start the presentation, and I'm not sure if you have my slides and everything is okay on that side. Do you have my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides, Prof.
Wonderful. So as Professor Sharifa mentioned, I'm going to have a review of what everybody have gone through during the last year, which was a wonderful year and a remarkable year in human civilization and would remain for years and centuries. And it needs to be focused even in the future many times and need to be reviewed to get many lessons from this event. Although it was not a favorable event, but the pandemic of Corona had many things to learn from. Everybody might think that it was started from here, the Wuhan food market, and it is still questionable whether it actually started from there or some other places, and it was just a presenting point. So basically, we have still many investigations to go to understand where this virus came from, where this tiny particle, and that we are still hesitated to call it as an organism, living organism or not. You know that in case of viruses, for example, such a very tiny virus, we are still doubtful if we have to categorize them as organism, living organism, or just a structure, a system. But it started, somehow appeared here in this market, and everybody thinks that this disaster and the full story and everything that the whole world have gone through was started from this point. Soon after that, China became infected with this virus, and in early 2020, and after that, little by little, it spread all over the world. Because of the difference between this century and the previous centuries, we had before some endemics and we have even some pandemics, but not even those pandemics were spreading so fast all over the world. You may have a fly coming from Wuhan and the next day be in United States, so it can spread the virus. And the virus has intelligently used of this opportunity to spread itself everywhere. 3 months later, almost everywhere around the world, including my country, was infected. 6 months later, the situation was worse. And as you can see, the colors are darkened. It means the number of people, infected people, are increasing. And 9 months later, at the end of 2020, everywhere was very much contaminated by this virus, and it has affected the human life dramatically. This slide, which is actually, let me mention this point, that not all these slides are mine, apparently, because it's a review lecture. But you can always see the source that I got any slide or any picture from on the picture or on the slide. So I won't mention where this slide came from, and we will continue with my talk. But if you want the reference, it's always on the slide, and you may take advantage to go to the site and get more information. So this curve shows that in 1 year, more than 60 million, and right now in December, we have about 70 million of the human population are infected by this virus, and it is actually grown very fast. But the picture is different in different places and locations. We will see that, for example, let's say starting with Europe, up to the September, we did not have that many infected people. So it was going up and down a little bit, but the number was still less than 100,000 people. From the August of this year, it suddenly jumped up in Europe, and we have to look at these diagrams from different regions to get lessons of how it has been spread around and what kind of reactions from the human authorities, from our societies, could have led it to spread faster or to ban it and control it. As for example, in America, it started from the May to go on a wave, very sharp wave, and after that going down in September, but again in October, we have a very big increase. And this is actually one of the stories that we see in many other places as well. In South Asia, again the same, suddenly went up from June, and in Eastern Mediterranean, we had 2 waves up to now, like in Africa. The first wave was even bigger, more than 10,000 people were infected, then it went down and again went up. So looking at the history, it started from last December 2019, when the first appearance of the first patient was reported in Wuhan, China. About 3 weeks later, WHO accepted and confirmed this and alerted the world from China, received alert from China that we have this kind of infection, which might get to the other part of the world. Soon after that, they found the source and they closed the Wuhan 7 Food Center. And after that, they identified the source as being virus from the COVID family and called it COVID-19. The first death appeared 1 month later, and after that, the first case out of China was reported in Thailand in January 13. It continued that the Chinese government coordinated the area and basically it controlled a little bit the spread of the virus. But at the end of January, WHO declared outbreak a global health concern. If 2 days later, the other death was confirmed in Philippines, and a week later, it was going out all over. 2 weeks later, even in Egypt. In February 11th, WHO actually declared the name of COVID-19 and accepted that for this virus. At the end of almost of the February, the NIH start working on this virus and FDA start working on the diagnostic test for the sake of controlling this virus. WHO in March declared that the number of infected people passed 100,000 and a pandemic arose around the world. This pandemic changed our life dramatically. Everywhere were almost closed. People were behind the barriers of different kinds, couldn't be as free as they have been before. And disinfectants and sanitizers started to be spread all over the world, closed area and open areas. Everywhere we have a kind of a spread of the Colloquium and other detergents, which we did not used to have before. And people all start to wear masks and personal protections, which in some cases went too far and made some problems for some nations. In some very traditional nations, people start to listening to nonsense advices. And because of that, we had number of events and death which shouldn't have happened. But because of the fear that had been spread among the people, they started to do whatever they can. And in some cases, not very good advice, which actually took some lives on top of what virus was taking. And after that, some people and in some areas, the situation became worse because people start rushing towards supermarkets, rushing towards the wholesale places and start collecting everything. And we had a shortage of different goods that the people needed in such a situation because they start storing it in their home because of the fear. And it was a reaction that we have seen about 4 months after the start of the pandemic, during that 3-4 months. And we had a very bad situation all over the world. And we were witnessing even some fights between people for some specific or some small item. And this kind of behavior needs to be focused in the future and get lesson from that and have a public education all over the world, because it won't be the end. We will have some other pandemics later on. And suddenly we saw that the whole world is halted, stopped. The whole world, people start going in closed areas, hiding in their places, scaring from each other, and in some cases, scaring from themselves. It was a panic of self-unconsciousness, social unconsciousness, and fear all over the world. And the very super active world that we were witnessing in 2019 suddenly became so silent. And this is another thing that we need to get lesson in the future and think about it very seriously. However, we had a natural kind of isolation in some areas. For example, Australia, Bangkok later on, Taipei, Taiwan, we had very few number of infected people because of the natural distance from the other parts of the world. For example, in Perth, the capital of Western Australia, for 8 months, there were no new infection, no single new infection in the society. So people were isolated and were safe. Should we learn that in such a situation, we have to follow the isolations all over the world, lack of communication, lack of traveling, or we have to think about it that this is the natural way, this is the nature actually granted us. But as a human being, as an intelligent identity, we need to think twice if that's a good way to deal with such a situation, or we have to have better solutions. In the United States, as I mentioned, the census and the statistic, after a while, everywhere we had the pandemic fear, and ICUs became occupied. Here, all over the United States, the places that you see darker areas means the beds, the ICU beds were fully occupied. So even the US government start building new hospitals because the ICU did not have any vacancy and people were struggling for what to do. We all know United States as one of the most civilized countries in this time. So, and with the most equipped things and very sophisticated facilities for medical care and for society, but for the people. And in such a society, we have seen very dramatic and very unfortunate results coming from the hospitals and from the society. And this is another point to think about. If a nation's or a country's facilities is good enough to deal with such events, or some other variables need to be taken into consideration. Otherwise, you will have the worst situation, the most number of deaths around the world in spite of all facilities. So maybe the facility is not the only thing that might count for this type of disasters. And the death increase, unfortunately, we have more than 1.5 million deaths right now as a result of these tiny particles, and it started dramatically from March. Might be a little bit more before March because of, writing down the number and, noting the number of death and, becoming familiar, different doctors around the world about the signs and about the death. But anyway, after March, that most of the doctors around the world were aware of the symptoms and the situation, and they start recording the number of deaths out of COVID-19, we will see that human beings were tolerated more than 500 and then 5,000 and then 10,000 deaths a day, which is a disaster for the human being in 21st century. So the whole world became a kind of very bad situation under the control of one tiny virus that has affected all life and the human nation. Death everywhere, which was disappointing, frustrating, and changing the situation of families and societies, all because of this very tiny particle that we cannot even see. It is not such a thing that we can see under a normal microscope. It is very small in size and very small in number of nucleotide as the controlling particles of behavior of one organism, of one living organism, of one system that may interfere with the society, with the creation. Very small, tiny particle has caused all these things. But it was not the first time. If we look at the history, the human being had always been infected by these particles. These tiny particles could kill us very dramatically in large amount of numbers. It started from before BC, and it is still after AD and it is still in our most civilized and improved and developed century right now. Plague had always killed human beings. It started from 30 to 50 million deaths in about 165 to 180 AD. And after that, Black Death, again from the same teeny particles, 75 to 200 million people have been recorded to be dead. After that, 25 to 55 million in New World smallpox. Then, third plague, Russian flu, and yellow fever killed people in more than 10 million, 10 times that what we are witnessing this year. From 19th century, Asian flu, Hong Kong flu, and after that, HIV in total got the life of more than 100 million people. More recently, SARS and MERS from the same family as coronavirus has killed more than 1,000 or 2,000 people. You see that the number is coming down dramatically because these two viruses were not spread so fast. They did not have in their nature this kind of spreading and distributing all over the world. They were more endemic than pandemic. So they were localized, for example, in terms of SARS in China, although even at that time, not as precaution and as control as this time have been taken by the Chinese government or the world in total. And MERS was in some Arab countries. So the virus by itself did not want to spread that much. Control was not as high as what we are witnessing and what we are doing right now, but it didn't spread that much. This new member of this family, coronavirus, spread very fast and doesn't hesitate to go from here to there and to other places so rapidly. That's why, in spite of its other members, MERS and SARS, that killed only about 2,000 people, so far it killed more than 1.5 million people. What is this virus? This is, as I said, a member of the family of coronaviruses, which is considered to be a member of beta-Covis, and it is very small in its genome. It has only about 30,000 base pair in length. This virus particle is about 50 to 100 nanometer in diameter. And it is sharing about 80% of its genome with other parts of the family, 50% with MERS. And this is the structure of this virus. It contains a very simple system. Consider this and compare it with other creations with very complex system. This system is very small. It has an envelope made of some proteins. It has an RNA in it, and the names of these proteins are listed here. It has a spike protein on its membrane that causes its attachment to other cells. And after that, it has some small ion channel transmembrane domain type of shape that would allow it to be injected into the cell and after that released from the cell when it reconstructed itself in the host cell. So this is all this virus is about. Only 5-6 different parts, 5-6 different systems that came together and made a system of about 5-6 parts. Very simple, but making so dramatic. from strain L or from different kind of strains to strain G suddenly. They suddenly went there. But for example, in North America, they had all history of strain L, other particles, and then strain G. In Africa, most of the people are infected by strain G, which right now is the most dominant and most fast spreading strain of this virus. The new kind of this virus, the new sub-strain of this virus is infected different group of age of people in comparison to the first one, strain L, which was aiming and the older people above 50 years of old. With strain G, we are witnessing infection in very, very childhood ages, 8 years old, 7 years old, and it is very much dominant in this patient. And it is making the spread of this virus more rapidly because it's more difficult to control children and young. So basically, young generation goes here and there, they make small and big gatherings, and the virus is spreading more fast because of this opportunity that it's mutated from being infected to older people to the younger people. This is published by Reuters recently, and it shows where of this nucleotide of this virus is mutating. Most of the RNA, the 30,000 base pair RNA of this virus is basically non-structural proteins. So basically, they don't form anything in the duplication process of this virus. About 1/5 of these base pairs is making the spike protein, which is very important for the virus to attach to the other cells and get into the cell. And the other structures like those ion form channels, like the other proteins that make the envelope, and these things are the other 1/5 of the base pair. So basically, about 3/5 of the structure of the RNA is just for support of the other parts. And it's not, or we don't still know about the function of those parts. And here, I would like to mention that strain G is because of the mutation, as you can see in this part, of this spike protein, as well as strain V. These two strains are all mutations in the spike protein, making this virus more invadable, attaching to the cells and injecting into the cells more easily. Here again, if you look at the South Korea and Singapore and compare these two pictures with the previous one for other parts of the world, you will see that in Singapore, they are still dealing with the first initial strain of the virus, and after that, different kind of viruses which they are not as invadable and as deadly as in the other side of the world. In South Korea, they could control the spread of new strains into their society, and they are still dealing with strain V, not even that much of strain G. So it shows, comparing different parts of the world, shows how the system control may affect the outcome, while, for example, in some parts of Asia, strain G is killing many people. In South Korea, they could control that strain to be in to get into their country. This is one of our works from one of my postdoc students in my lab, that we have worked on these mutations, and we could find out that has been published recently, that a place on 32 base pair dislocation here of the spike protein, we have a kind of mutation G instead of U. And in the strains that we have more G on this location, the virus is more flexible in its structure, and it can escape from the defense mechanism of the cell and of the human being. So basically, this might be local to focus on for the mutations and to think of some way to control this mutation at this part. This is like a snap small nucleotide basically change, and this small nucleotide change can affect the result and the dangerously of this virus very dramatically. Now, let's look at the situation of different societies. In terms of the health security index, and in terms of how sensitive they have been in front of this tiny virus. You will see on top United States, UK, Australia, Netherlands, Canada, Thailand, Sweden, and then you will see some other places like China, India, South Korea here in the middle. If you look at it, as I mentioned before, for example, the societies that they have been somehow ready for a pandemic, they could control it very fast. China was the country that this virus was started there, initiated all this pandemic from there. But China could control it in a couple of months because just prior to this pandemic of COVID-19 outbreak, China had a program for controlling communicable diseases. So the whole country was ready for such a disaster. Soon after it started and got to everywhere around the world, China could control it. But don't forget that it controlled it with a kind of very, very strong system. So the reports that are coming from China, they had controlled even different locations and different communities not to have any kind of interaction with each other in one city. So two things. One of them, previous background and a kind of program that they had for controlling just before the pandemic of COVID-19. And the other one, very strong governmental control of everything in that city helped to control it very fast. But none of the same thing was actually in South Korea with a small difference. South Korea has had another program and had a kind of practice, national practice for controlling viral and communicable diseases in their country before this pandemic. So they could control it. But the use of electronic device instead of power, governmental power, and the ethics of the people in South Korea, that they are the kind of people that they obey the order very carefully, and they have a good understanding of social concerns. So in South Korea society, when something is good for the society and advised, it is well followed, and the people learn to follow these things. Versus some other places, like in the United States, that we have a completely opposite situation. When an advice comes, because of many factors, maybe mistrust or maybe some other things, not the whole nation is following. And that's what we have actually seen, even fights, even some kind of disturbances of the people who they were against any kind of control, and they wanted to live as they want to have. So basically, that might be one of the reasons that United States society couldn't control the system versus China versus South Korea. In some other countries like Canada, governmental help, assistance from the government helped a lot, assisted to control the society. The Canadian government started actually supporting financially everybody who might have been affected, or every business that might have been affected by this virus. They actually tolerated a big cost for that, but because of that, people stayed at home. Also in Canada, we have the reports that they had controlled the gathering of even a small gathering very efficiently, and they could control it. The other thing is, in Canada, we have a small population of about 30 million in the biggest country right now. And they are localized because of the weather and geographic situations in different places. So the government could isolate the places whenever they had a kind of appearance of infected people. So all these things help Canada to control the situation very effectively, but couldn't happen in the United States. So as you can see, different factors might affect the result and the outcome of such attack from this virus. All these things have been taken into the consideration by epidemiologists, and they start working mathematically with neural network, artificial neural network, and with other programs to look at the situation in different countries and to calculate the outcome that might happen. So they triggered 10 very important factors: support for the healthcare staff, a good balance between individual life, good communication between the community, a trust between the government and the society, and the education, good use of multimedia, and a realistic self-efficacy as the main important factors that might help a society to control a pandemic, something like this, or not to control this. Going more into the details, we have data banks that is collecting all this information from different places and putting together. And when you do calculations on this data, you may see the effect of different factors that might affect the outcome, the result, if the people die or the society saved. For example, quarantining, as you can see here, has a big impact to change the outcome. Or mass gathering cancellation, as you can see here, has a big impact on the outcome. Or you can see here, isolations, again, which this is from another calculation on this data. Or even here, you will see closing of the schools, how effective that could be, and the other actions to be taken care to control the situation. So it was a good lesson, although we paid a big loss, a big cost for that of different lives, but we have good data in this century to be analyzed, to understand how can we control these things, and then to adapt it on the situation with different countries, different governments, different facilities, different levels of the society's culture and education, to adopt these results on those societies to get lessons for the future if such a thing happens, how to control it. And I would like to advise the governments and the healthcare authorities to think about that and to learn from it. So one of the things that was very much critical and we needed to have it was a way of identification, diagnosis, and identifying those infected people. Unfortunately, we still do not have a very good method of diagnosis for this virus. One of the things is temperature. And that's one of the things that with the help of even surveillance camera, the Chinese government, the South Korean government has been actually taken advantage to trigger those people who might be infected. But you have fever with other diseases too. So although the sensitivity of this method is considerable, but the specificity of this method is very low. So it actually would be very costly. Here from FDA is summarizing different methods that we have right now for the diagnosis of this virus and the infected people. We have some molecular methods, antigen tests, and antibodies. With the molecular, which is more likely called as PCR around the world right now, we have a good specificity if it be taken correctly. But we have a problem in taking it correctly from the right place and the right sample. If that happens, it might be up to 85% effective with a good diagnostic application. But as we can see all over the world, the accuracy of this method in practice is only about 50%. One of the things is sampling. The other thing is good facilities in the laboratory and the process which needs highly educated people and the interpretation of the result that needs high educated people. So all these things make this method a little bit difficult to rely on for the diagnosis. Later on, antibody and antigen dependent tests came along. These are just to looking at the same phenomena from two opposite sides. These two methods, unfortunately, have very, very high sensitivity, but very, very low specificity, meaning that we may have false results very easily because of the change of different antigens and because of what we may or may not consider in sampling. You see, with the PC, this is the timeline of infection. If a person gets infected with the virus, get contact with this virus, it might take between 4 to 14 days to see any kind of symptoms. So basically, you may have many, many people who has been infected, but they don't show any symptoms. After that, we will see that little by little, different antibodies goes up in the body of these people. Even before increasing of these antibodies, PCR might be positive, and that might be a good place to use of the PCR, the molecular ways to detect the virus and infected people. But if you get a good sampling. After that, after 2 weeks, PCR might be very low because the body has defended the virus, the number of the virus went down, so the PCR doesn't have enough particles to replicate it in RT PCR actually mechanism and to have a good thermal cycling to be considered as infected or not. So here is the place that you will get negative result. Then an increase of IgM and going down and an increase of IgG and going down. Here is the place that you can rely on different kind of antigen or antibody tests. So basically for different tests, we have some advantages and some disadvantages. And at the same time, if you look at this timeline, you will see the person is going through different symptoms and different manifestations of their health, which is more clear here. Here, the exposure, and after that, a start of symptoms, and the symptoms might be very mild, if any. The first thing that the governments of different countries were focusing on was the temperature of human body, but the temperature is not always reliable. In many cases, I have seen only for 1 day of above 38 degrees centigrade, and in many cases, many instances, we did not see any fever at all. Sore throat is another thing that you may get in about something about 50 to 70% of the people. And after that, a stuffy noise and congestive noise that you may see in just about 13 to 13 people, and sneezing and cough. So the symptoms are the symptoms of a viral infection. But in many instances, you don't see any symptom at all. And that's another point of problem, that it spread very slightly, very silently all over the world without witnessing any kind of symptom in those people. But in any case, we have fever, we have dry cough. And this dry cough is very important to be considered by physicians, and fatigue, and after that, headache, sore throat, and these things. One other diagnostic factor which need highly educated people and good facilities, but might be considered as a golden standard, is the CT scan or X-ray radiography of lung. And if a very highly educated people look at that grassy picture and glassy picture on the sides, you may consider that as an infected person. But it is very clear when the person is actually in top of the infection and it is infected about 2 weeks ago. So during these 2 weeks, it may spread the virus all over the family and the other peoples. So with this COVID-19, we have some risk factors that make some people more sensitive than others. One of them is the weight. Overweighting is a big factor that might change the outcome to worse. diabetes, although CDC has announced that diabetes 1 and 2, type 1 and 2 might be different, but later on it has been published by different researchers. There is basically no difference between diabetes type 1 or 2 to be more sensitive to this virus. And the other things are older age, male sex, more sensitive than females, higher BMI, means overweight, and the people with higher heart rate. So means with kind of heart problem in their history might make them more sensitive for the virus. So the healthcare authorities rushed to find a cure, a treatment. So for this kind of pandemics, we cannot wait to find a new drug for. A new drug may take years to come along after we understand. And during these years, we will have a big loss of our population. So the best strategy is to look for whatever you have and see which one might be useful for this situation and treatment of these illnesses. We have seen almost all drugs from every categories, from every classification came into consideration and has been trialed by different healthcare authorities and hospitals in different locations. Some of them were more considered and have been used more frequently in different health systems in different countries. One of them is remdesivir, and the other one is ribavirin, antiviral agents that came into consideration. They basically against the RNA replication. So they started to stop the virus from replication. And then we have even interferons, IVIG, as a supporting and for the patient. But that is another lesson that physician got it very, very costly. Dealing with this virus and treating these people, you got to be very careful to go very smoothly. Don't go to support the immune system of the patient so strongly or to forget that. No, part of the death that we will see in the next slide of this virus is because of this cytokine storm. When the virus affects the cells and get into the cells through the ACE2 receptor and start replicating itself, those are the places that we may control it with some traditional drugs, some normal drugs that we are using in the market, like losartan, which might affect this entrance through the ACE receptor. And after that, we may control the replication of the virus with remdesivir and favipiravir. And after that, when the virus made its particles, it won't reassemble and get out of the cells. And that's where chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine might come into effect. Okay, these are good. But what is killing? The killing is because of this cytokine storm and because of the overreaction of our immune system. So if we make it too strong and we actually add too much of even vitamin C, which is the safest drug in this situation, using too much of IVIG, using too much of interleukin, interferon, and these things, we may actually assist this storm to be even worse. So this is something, the best situation is to cope with the patient and to understand what is the balance level and keep it in that level. Many of MAPs, monoclonal antibodies, have been used for controlling of this storm. So drugs from any categories, monoclonal antibodies, and even traditional drugs went into consideration, went into clinical trial. Unfortunately, none of them were useful. In a recently published research from WHO, you will see remdesivir, no difference between control and the affected people who received remdesivir. Hydroxychloroquine that has been used so extensively, basically, no difference, no statistical significant difference between the control and the patient who have received it for the treatment. The same with the other people, with the other agents like interferons and other things. So we lost our hopes completely with these drugs. Everything right now except dexamethasone a little bit for the acute phases to control it. But it is again dependent. And we still don't have a good feature of how cortisons might help a patient when it is on the last stage of very acute situation. But the other drugs have been extensively practiced, extensively looked into, and precisely trials. Unfortunately, no good result so far. So the hope was from the beginning, and even they started using of new methods like cell therapy, and they started to use of mesenchymal stem cells to be injected to the lung and to actually give a kind of rest to the lung with the preparation of new cells, which still is under investigation and still is under trial, and we don't know about the result. So the hope was for vaccines, to use of the particle, to use of the RNA, to use of the virus against this virus. We, with our intelligence and with our facilities, with our drugs, couldn't do anything, unfortunately. So the work has been started from the beginning to test the vaccines. We have a long process for testing a vaccine and getting it into the market to release it. I am summarizing this whole process here and different steps. It normally takes years, between 5 to 15 years, to accept a vaccine to come into the market. You need preclinical tests on animals, on cells. You need phase 1 study in very small number of people. Then you need phase 2. As a result of that, phase 3, early limited approval, using it in multicentral places and controlling the outcome, controlling late outcome and these type of things. But in this case, we had a kind of emergency merge of all this process and a vaccine. And it is very much cautious, and we need to be careful about that, and we need to look at it very carefully, because we are using of some methods that we have not been using before. They are completely novel in vaccination. Different companies all over the world, for the study that I had, I think we had more than 130 companies that started looking for vaccines all over the world. Some of them which have gone more, actually progressed more and have gone more further, are listed here. Zidas is an Indian company that started this vaccine preparation based on the DNA particle, which is nucleotide. And after they are up to now in phase 3 of trial. CureVac is a German company that started with mRNA particles to use as the vaccine for the sensitization of human immune system. And they passed phase 2 right now. Imperial College of London and some other places. And even the vaccine with Sinopharm, which I heard that got approval in Arab countries, many of Arab countries, to be distributed by a Chinese company. But the two vaccines that made more noise because of the support, I believe, and because of the company that they were more equipped and they had more scientists and they could go through these steps more rapidly. And of course, they had a better support from the money-wise, I mean, because they actually pre-sold the vaccines, and the government, US government, European community, Canada, and other countries actually purchased the vaccine in advance and get them assistance, get them help for making the vaccine so rapidly, is Moderna and Pfizer. Moderna started, that's a American company, started its vaccine with working on mRNA. Moderna was working on mRNA for years, but couldn't get any drug to the market. But with this particular case, they made mRNA 1273 as a good particles of the RNA, which is targeting the spike part of the virus, and they got it into the trial. The first trial in March showed that this particle as a vaccine can be effective in monkey. And after that, in July, they started the first clinical part on human being with about 30,000 volunteers. In November, they started multicentral trials in different places. And as a result of that, they have shown that they claim that the vaccine is effective for about 94%. And the good thing with Moderna's vaccine is that it doesn't need very specific, special facilities for carrying and maintenance. You can just keep it in the fridge and you can use it for about 6 months and shelf life. And after you open it, you can use it in 30 days, up to 30 days. So that's a good thing with Moderna. Pfizer and BioNTech are two other companies. They got very good help, and they started with 2 particles, RNA particles at the beginning, and they started phase 1 and phase 2 trial, mixed of them with the permission that they got from their authorities, United States, and they started working on these 2 particles, and eventually they accepted one of those, and they continued with that. And they started later on in in November to claim about 94 cases with about 95 to 97% of effectiveness. The UK government pre-authorized the use of this vaccine and was the first country in Western community to accept that this vaccine to be used on their nation. And after that, just recently, FDA accepted it after actually a kind of unusual announcement from the US president to the FDA head that if you don't accept it and don't release it, go and look for another job, which was a kind of unusual statement by a president to the authority of, organizing authority and controlling authority. But right the next day, the vaccine was approved. But actually, it was not perhaps because of because we have access to the white sheet of the Pfizer vaccine that has been actually issued by the FDA. In any case, these vaccines are in action right now. They are actually applying to the people, and the vaccination is started. What we have seen so far is allergic reaction, which is a big consideration in using this vaccine. We have to wait for a couple of more years to get the real outcome. And we have to have very focused, very precise studies and following of the people who got the vaccine to understand what these RNA or DNA particles injected to human being might do to our body. We still don't know about that. All we know right now is this can sensitize our immune system more clearly and more rapidly than the actual virus by itself. So basically, our immune system are more alert and more ready to fight with this virus. That's a kind of immunity. That's what we call it as active immunity. Means using of our body and our system and our mechanism to fight against it. It's not a passive one, like the drugs or interferon and these things. But this active means that you are switching on some mechanism in your body which has been balanced before, not 100, millions and millions switches that are working together to keep you like this. When a tiny virus comes in, this balance change. We will see death even. Now we are injecting one of these switches purposely to the body. Before we used to have the same virus, but inactivated, weakened. So basically, we would put our immune system in front of a very weak, naive system to fight with it. But right now, we are actually adding a particle, necked and injected with the help of some assistance to the body. And it's getting its way to the nucleus. And it is changing the balance of all biological actions and reactions in our body dramatically. So far, we have seen allergic reactions. It is up to the point that it has been warned that this virus is very, very cautious for the people with the background of hypersensitivity and allergic reactions. Right now, headache, chills, muscle pain, and these type of things are reported from this, and in some cases death, which is still tolerable. But we have still a long way to understand these vaccines and their effects. The way that we are using it is because of the force is on us. We are witnessing killing of many people, and we have the choice of going with this story as the nature had put in front of us, or accepting this very, very fast approval. Mixing, jumping from some steps and accepting the virus. So we don't have that much other choices, but we have to be very cautious, we have to be very careful, and we have to follow this situation. This is the formulation for this vaccine that has been used by Pfizer. The vaccine is made of a small messenger RNA as an active ingredient from the virus, from the SARS-CoV-2 and from the spike part of the virus. And it has some nanoparticles, some lipids that made a capsule around it, not to be destroyed by the enzymes in the cell, because one of the problems that when you get this kind of particles into the cells, the cellular immune system within the cell would completely destroy it. So they needed to have a kind of capsule to protect it, and they selected nanoparticles, lipid nanoparticles, and it has some salts to control the pH and osmolality and stability. The Pfizer vaccine has the disadvantage of requiring -70 and -60 degrees for the storage. So they need a very, very sophisticated facilities for carrying around the country and distributing this vaccine to different locations for use. And after that, they actually made up a box that can keep it in that temperature for at least 1 week to 10 days. And even after opening it for a couple of days but it is costly. And the vaccine by itself is costly too, compared to the Moderna one. So the vaccine, both of these two vaccines needs 2 injections, 3 weeks apart. And after that, it gives you, hopefully, about 1 to 2 year active protection, but needs to be followed for 2 years. All this story gave us hope that we will transfer from the nightmare of COVID-19 to a better future, normal life. Look, we got into the point that our normal life is our dream. And that's a good lesson. We had all these things without considering what has been granted to us. And we were not careful about that. So we lost it. And a small opportunity from a tiny virus that we are still hesitating to call it organism, living organism. We consider ourselves so big, and we sometimes don't call it living organisms. But it had changed our lives so dramatically that everything that had been granted to us vanished. And our normal life is our dream right now. But with the help of this vaccine, with the help of the social alert, and following the precautious orders, people are looking for a better future in coming days. But let's review everything and get some lessons from that. What COVID-19 have done to us during 2020 had changed the lifestyle very dramatically. It has changed minds, human individuals, for more personal protection. And we will see that it will affect our society in the future. Fear, escaping from each other, isolation might be the outcome that remained from this experience in human society. So we need to be careful about that. You see, the other pandemics, the other situation, the other big events has changed our life dramatically. Look at the way that we were living in 1980s, 1990s, and look at the way that we are living after September 9/11. Just a small explosion and a small accident changed all over the world with surveillance cameras, distrust, cautious, so dramatic that has affected our life. These tiny particles had even more effect than that one to everybody's personal life, personal mind. In some cases, we are scaring of ourselves. And that psychological effect might actually result not a very favorable outcome for the human civilization in the future. And we need to be careful about that. It will change the microbial flora and the viral flora of our environment. We had a balance, we had an equation, and we had a kind of balance for the ecosystem between our life, other animals' life, viral organisms, and bacteria. With this very extensive use of sanitizers and alcohol and detergents all about the earth, we changed it so dramatically. Many viruses that they were living with us, many bacteria that they were living with us, and we had a kind of balance in our life. We are taking advantage of them. Part of our health was because of them, has been completely disappeared. This ecosystem, this biology will change because we have been using detergents and alcohol and sanitizer so extensive all around the world. We have to be careful about what we will see in the future because of a new balance, a new ecosystem. And that might not only affect us, but also the herbal ecosystem, the biological ecosystem of our animals, and we may need to be cautious and waiting for some kind of strange appearances of different systems. We may see some delay effect and illnesses because of the change in our immune system and the lung diseases because of the use of these sanitizers. To tell you the truth, almost the same number of the people that we are witnessing as coronavirus infected people, we are witnessing with the people who are actually affected by the adverse effect of bleach, adverse effect of alcohol, and other things. And all of these things will change the balance. So we have to look at it very carefully. Now that we are in the point that we think that we are getting some rest, we are getting some escape, we have to review whatever has been done to us, what adventure we have gone through during the last year, and get lessons and be very precautious and do not think that with 2 vaccines, 3 vaccines, everything is finished. We have many things to take care of in our early and late future. But unfortunately, the human being is very forgetting organisms and creation. We forget so quickly. We forget everything so quickly. And we don't get lessons as it desire. So we have to be cautious about that. I appreciate your consideration and your attention for my talk. And I hope that I could pass a good message to the audience. And I would like to remind you of what has been advised to us, that unless we be very much careful and follow the truth and follow the good things and good advices, and be patient for that, and be tolerant for that, and we actually work for that, we will lose. So it needs to be followed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Arshad, for this very inspiring and also stimulating lecture about COVID-19 pandemic and also what it has affected the human life, how much it has changed this virus, this small virus, which cannot be seen by the visible eyes, have changed our life, create unnecessary fear for the human being, and how much that we have relying on the personal protection. So people are wearing face masks, make sure that hands are sanitized whenever they go out, okay, and we have to ensure that We managed to control the social distancing, as well as this with I've seen that you mentioned about the excessive use of disinfectant that will actually affect our microbial and viral balances. So with that, I think I would like to, I can see many questions already, Prof, but I would like to open for live discussion. I open the session for discussion. So if anybody would like to ask question or give their opinions to Prof. Arshad, I will invite you to unmute your speaker, ask your question or your opinions, and then please mute it back so that Prof. Arshad can answer it. Okay? So I open it to anybody who would like to ask question. I know there will be many.
Maybe I can start the ball rolling. Hadaria here. Thank you, Prof. Farshad. It's such a wonderful presentation. I enjoyed it very much. And I appreciate the fact that you are talking to yourself at 4 o'clock in the morning in Iran to, to share with us. And you have delivered it beautifully. Thank you.
Thank
Towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned about immunization, yeah?
Yes.
Vaccine. We as lay people, we do not know much about virology. I'm a chemist. I wouldn't understand much about mRNA, RNA, DNA, and all that. But we do hear a lot of worrying claims from many parties about the possible dangers or possible side effects of the vaccines that are being released at the moment. So, as an expert, could you give us a little bit of a opinion of your confidence level on these vaccines that are being released to us? I know it's not a fair question, but maybe you can share with us. Thank you.
So you don't want to put me in front of FDA and other organisms, organizations.
No. I am just your opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, my opinion. I personally, because I got infected twice with the virus, and
Twice?
yes, because my lab is working on it, and so we are working with it daily. So I personally do not need to get the virus, do not need to get to this shot, this vaccine, because I have been infected and my immune system looks to be alert and ready for that. For anybody who might have been infected by this virus, it's not necessary at all. So doesn't think about that. I personally would rather to look for a good and easy diagnostic way than injecting with this vaccine. This is frankly speaking, my personal feeling. If you have a good and simple diagnostic well, so you can just by non-medication and non-vaccine control the situation, and that's much better. However, we do not have such a thing, not yet. The best diagnostic base that we are dealing with is effective theoretically up to about 90%, 85%. In practice, only about 55, 60%, as I'm getting reports from different parts of the world. So basically, with this situation, we are missing about half of the infected people, and they can spread the virus very widely everywhere. So with such a situation, and the situation that we have not seen any drug to be effective, we have examined whatever we had in our hand, and we had examined many traditional and very, I would say, paramedical type of actions by different nations to control, were not successful. So in such a situation, this is a hope. So we have to rely on that. But as I said, we have to be very, very cautious, because this is the early experiences of human being with injecting a very, very strong and powerful particle, although very small, although very well controlled but we are injecting and we are helping this particle to get into the nucleus, to the center of our biological activities, to change the balance over there between different genes and different proteins. This is a matter that we need to be cautious. So the vaccine so far showed that it is effective. It showed that the number and the seriousness of adverse effect is tolerable, it's acceptable, but these are all very early results. And I'm a little bit cautious about following the injected people very carefully and giving the alert that if anything happened to their health, report it to the doctors and physicians and the centers, and they look at it very carefully. So far, that's our best hope. So we have to follow it, but with a big cautious.
Thank you. Your answer's clear, but it makes us think again. Thank you.
That's why.
Don't fear, just be brief. That's life.
Yes,
We have to accept. One thing that we have to accept, the world is changed. Now we have another identity in our world. So far we had flu. So far we had other viruses, other bacteria.
Yes.
Now we have a new member came to our life. We have to cope with the situation, and we have to understand that this world is a world of fighting between these particles with each other to make a bigger space for themselves. We have to be careful to keep our place. Changing the world so dramatically as we were forced to do with using of so much bleach and disinfectants and all these things, that's not good. But because we did not have any other choice, now we have to accept the reality. This is the new world. This is the new situation, and we have to look for solution to keep our position, to keep our environment in such a new ecosystem.
Prof. Shirazi, I'm very concerned to hear that you got the virus, you got infected twice. So one infection does not stop the next. Is our body immune system not triggered by the first infection? You may get the second one.
It is actually quite depends on your situation. I tell you, I got the first one in last February 2019. And it was because I was the head of a big congress, the biggest congress in pharmacy and medicine in Iran, which usually hosts about 3,000 people. So being the guest, you are shaking hand with half of them. And at that time, it was not announced public, cautious at that time. So basically, we were not careful about that. We knew that we have a virus going around, but we didn't have that much cautious. So because of that, I had, in just 3 days, I had shaking hands with, let's say, 1,000, 2,000 people. So basically, it shows that the frequency of exposure. So my frequency of exposure was very high in just 3 days. A week after that, I got sick, and it was a bad one because it was so, huge amount of vaccines presumably came to my body, and I was not ready for that. Thanks to God, I passed it in 2 weeks, and everything was okay. But then our experience, because my lab is working on this virus, so we're working with it daily. And actually, we are not working directly on the virus, but we are working on samples coming from the infected people. So basically, we may get again because of, even if you be so cautious, about 8 months after that, 9 months after that, yes, I got, but it was very, very mild. It was just 2 days fever and a positive PCR. I didn't actually had that much symptoms. I just isolated myself from the other personals, not from our family, not to get infected, and just is passed very, very smoothly. The first one was very hard, but the second one looks like my immune system was ready enough. So I just got exposed to that, was positive for a while, and after that solved very peacefully without anything. But with the people, like some of our nurses, that they are working days and nights in those departments, with infection people. We had cases that they have been infected 3-4 times because of the exposure, daily big amount of exposure. So it shows that if you control the exposure, not to be exposed so many times with so many infected people, you are safe. But this is a balance. Your immune system has a capacity. If you are increasing the load of the virus, it is with other viruses as well. The load of virus is a concept that has first been introduced to the medical society after the HIV. So at that time, it was a public fear all over the world. People were actually scared to touch their hands with any kind of, cars, bench, everything. So they were so careful not to touch anything. But then investigation shows load of virus into your body is a very important factor. So your body can tolerate to some amount of virus coming into the body and just fight them without any symptom, without any illnesses. But when you are increasing it, like with the health professionals, like with those people who are investigating, researching on these things, and they have daily exposure, and like the nurses, and when a community is not alert enough and the virus is spread everywhere, people are communicating, going to the party, going to the cinema together, so the load of virus will go up. And at the point, again, your immune system might not be enough strong to solve the problem. But again, to have the antibody in your body, like my second time, it would be very easy. Just a fever, a little bit of 1-2 days viral symptoms, and after that, everything is okay. So don't scare, just be careful.
Right. Okay, Prof, I will read the questions from the chat room. It's from Anik Abdul Jalil. I think Prof. Farshad has already discussed about the Pfizer vaccine. Okay, because Anik would want to know more about Pfizer, which during that time, Prof was about to deliver your presentation about Pfizer. Okay, and then one from Prof. Hadaria, which I think Prof. Hadaria had already asked the question. Okay, and then there's one from Dr. Diana. Okay, Dr. Diana, because her mic is not working, so he put this question. Thanks, Prof. Farshad, for the wonderful presentation. Highlighting the geographical influence of COVID prevalence is superb. Could you please comment on the potential of natural resources such as lauric acid against COVID-19?
The thing with natural resources to fight this virus is not different with the use of natural resources for other problems, health problems. That we have a big difference between using natural medicines, for example, herbal medicines and animal medicines coming from the natural sources. In this case, with other cases, the difference is when we are dealing with a drug, accepted and confirmed drug in the health system, we know the identity and the active ingredient of the drug. We have a good idea about the mechanism of action and the consequences of its use. And we have a good idea of the concept that is called dose response. Means if you use this amount, you will get this result, and if you use the other amount, you will get the other result. But with natural sources, they are not as pure. They are a mix of many compounds. So we don't know if the active ingredient is working fine, but we have also some other ingredients that are dangerous or are affecting unfavorably some other places. That's one thing. The other thing is these natural products has not been investigated very carefully. So it is always, most of the cases that I have been witnessing, the result is case by case. It might be good for some people, but not for others. The other thing is psychological effect. We have, I would say, not correct, not accurate expression and going around the people that if something is natural, it's safe. And if something is natural, it's good. And if something is natural, it's to make us stronger. That's not true. Cyanide is natural. Different venoms are natural, but they're killing us. So this misconception has actually a healing effect on the human body. You see, the psychology, human psychology, has a big control on our biology. You feel that you are strong, you will fight. We call it in medicine placebo effect. If you give just sugar and you say to a person that this is your medication, it works. And in some references, you see that the placebo effect is more than 52%, i.e. half of the people that they just got placebo, you will see the effect, the cure. With this kind of natural medicine, in some cases, they might be very true medicines, but they need to be investigated. Otherwise, we may see the psychological effect, or we may see some adverse effects, or we may see good effects. But we are still unclear what is the reason behind this effect. If it is from one ingredient, if it is from a mix of different ingredients working together in that natural source. So the answer is very much unclear, but we are witnessing that in different countries, many natural sources came along and people were using it. In some cases, I have reports that it came out very bad with not very good result. And in some cases, we have cure, but we don't know if it is because of the natural source or it is because of the normal period of these illnesses. If you just leave the person with vitamins, with a normal nutrition, I would emphasize on that. Don't go too far. Don't inject yourself with lots of vitamins. You make it worse. Just keep the balance of your healthy situation as it is, but keep it because you are using it because of fight to the virus. So soon you will get deficiency in those vitamins, in those minerals, in those supports for your nutrition. Keep it in that level. Don't go farther. The virus by itself has a timeline of about 2 to 3 weeks. So it comes and then it goes. So with natural sources, because we have not been investigating so extensively, we don't know if the result is out of these sources and these resources, or because of the natural way that the virus actually go by. So in most investigated cases, what I have seen is just about 2 to 3 days difference between the natural way that the virus will go and will come and go, if you use these natural sources or not. That's what I have seen so far.
All right, Prof, there are more questions coming in. Okay, so this is from Siti Nadira Zainuddin. Assalamualaikum, Prof. Farshad Shirazi. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. It was very comprehensive and insightful. However, I have one question regarding the COVID-19 vaccine. Do you think regulatory standards for the vaccine should be relaxed in order to speed up the approval process? Is it safe, or should we as consumers wait for several years to see the side effect before we get vaccinated? Thank you. That's another interesting question which are quite related to our discussion.
Yeah, yes. You know, my answer is with another question.
Yeah.
Do you have any other choice? You know, that's a good answer. Do you have any other choice? As I said, we're going to be very cautious about that. But as a scientist, I have seen the white papers. I have seen the investigations from different sources. The thing is, in most cases, when we go through a normal controlling processes and acceptance processes, we see lots of papers coming from different locations, different points of views. Here, in accelerated approval process, as they call it, means because of the situation, because of the critical situation, they needed to accelerate it. we did not have this opportunity to look at these vaccines in different locations and by different scientists, multicentral and multi-opinions. So we are relying on FDA, on authorities, governmental authorities, healthcare authorities, and Pfizer, Moderna, and these companies, the work that they have done. We have to trust our system. There's no other way. Otherwise, nothing would remain. So basically, my simple answer to that question is rely. These are the big companies. These are the big organizations. Rely on them. We don't have any other choice right now. And in such a situation, trust of the authorities, even if they do some mistakes, even if they have some percentage of unfavorable results, unclear parts, but trust on them and following whatever we have right now is wise. So basically, I think we do not have any other choice. And I think at this situation, it has been a great job they have done. They have accelerated something that takes years into months, and they provided us with some good things, at least with the results that they have shown to us. So basically, I would advise to trust them and to follow it, but very cautiously. Be optimistic, very cautiously.
Okay. Okay, Prof. I have one presenter who requests to ask question directly to you. So I will invite Nur Surya. Nur Surya, all right. Okay.
Can you hear me, Prof? Hi,
Surya,
Prof.
we can.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Prof. Actually, I like to ask you a general opinion because this is a very famous issue, right? And I have opportunity to discuss this with my students, a new young generation, about their opinion regarding this COVID-19. And I'd like to share with you a little bit also. That I asked them and I basically talked to them why this COVID-19 is actually a famous virus, because this our world is not actually really new towards the virus. We already been infected since 1918, 20th century ago with the virus. But why this virus been so dramatically gain famously, like we need to quarantine and so on. And what they said is they also doesn't even know why the generation like the baby boomers, the millennia, think so seriously about this virus, because they also know about the history too. And they think that why we have to treat this virus so special, why not like we make it like we have a time like to basically try to cure this virus, but why we have to make this virus so special until that we need to turn our world like this. So I would like to ask Prof opinion about this matter, that when our world return into a normal back again and treat this virus just like any other virus like before. Thank you so much, Prof.
If I get your question correctly, it has you have two questions. One of them about the virus and why is it different, basically, from the other experiences that we had before, and the other one is when we will get to our normal life again. We have a big difference in 2019 with the other situations. Before, we didn't have internet and social media so extensively. I mentioned about psychological effect, about the propaganda, about the social awareness and international awareness. It might have some positive side, and people be more ready for the newcomer like this virus, because they get informed very fast in a moment. I award you, you award me. The news from China with all those protective systems that we have in that country had been released from China so fast, and everybody got to know about that. It has some positive views, some positive points, and also have some disappointing points, because it spread fears, and these fears work. And one of the things, not only in viral infection, in cancer, in heart disease, in many diseases, in almost any diseases, if you lose your confidence if you lose your psychological optimistic looking at your life, you lose your life. You know, a chemotherapic person just died after he lost hope. So basically, this kind of news all over the world, to me, has also weakened the immune system of the social. So basically, the virus had another opportunity to spread and to, look at the vaccine news. When the vaccine news came out just a week ago, we see dramatically decrease in fear all around the world, in even number of infected people. You know, even in the countries that the vaccine has not yet been distributed, the centers that the vaccine has not been applied yet, we see a decline in the number of infected people or reported people. So in news, an optimistic news has an effect. This news has an effect on our body, on our immune system. So basically, why this virus has been spreaded so fast and so dramatically and different from the previous experiences, one thing is traveling facilities, communicating facilities. You know, we didn't have so much, change of the people traveling around the world as we had in recent years. So it spreaded the virus so rapidly, but also the internet and the other things has caused cautious, has some positive effects, but to me, we have to think about it that it had some negative effect as well. And that's something that needs to be considered. When we are hoping to get back to our normal, perhaps if we be very lucky, a year from now, these kind of effects, these kind of consequences of a viral infection is not something, it might happen in a week, but it needs years to disappear. On top of that, we are witnessing the mutation of the virus. The mutation and extensive mutation in many cases weakened the virus, and somehow make a coping situation between our system and that new identity system. So that's good. But in some instances, get the flu virus. The flu virus is actually mutated up to about some years, 30% of its strains in the next year. So these mutated forms, these mutated strains are not always stronger and more dangerous and pathogenic than the original ones. But just some instances, those might happen. For example, in terms of this coronavirus, the strain G had some features for more rapid, extensive distribution, and also a stronger binding to the cell. So if these kind of mutations happened, our vaccine even might not be enough to protect us against that. So we have another year of adventures that we have to be careful about. And if we be lucky and everything goes as fast and as coordinatedly, another lesson that we got from this adventure is something unusual coordination between scientific community, governments, and people. Or the scientific community is always complaining about the support because the authorities are not always in favor. They're thinking of many things and they're thinking for short, resulting things. In science, you have to be patient, you have to be careful, and you have to be very, very, slowly and confident about your result. This is a good example that we have seen a coordination and collaboration between all these factors together. So if we have all these factors with each other, and the people don't get distributed so fastly because, okay, now we are sure that we are vaccinated, so why should they spend money on that? Why should we be careful? Why should we follow all these regulations, social distance and these things? We may need another year to come back to our normal life, as we would call normal life. We have to think about that too. But anyway, that may take a year, if you be lucky enough. That's my assumption.
Thank you so much, Prof. I will share it with my students. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All
My
right.
pleasure.
All right. I think I will have to. There are more questions, Prof. But I think I will discuss with you through email and WhatsApp. And I promise to all participants that I will give the answer from Prof. Rashad in the WhatsApp group. It looks like because we are out of time, we have another speaker after this. So I think there are more questions here. I'm very excited about it. But I promise everybody that I will make sure that me and Prof. Rashad will discuss this question and we will post it in our WhatsApp group. Okay? Okay, with that, I would like to thank you, Prof. Rashad, for the delightful insight, for the very extensive and comprehensive discussion, lively discussion that we had in this session. Okay, so I'm so happy to have you here, Prof, and wish that your talk will be actually in Malaysia itself, coming to here. That's what we promised, isn't it, Dr. Diana? When we went there, we promised that we will invite Prof. Rashad to Malaysia. So unfortunately, with this COVID-19, we just have be able to meet online through virtual. We hope that we will be able to have more engaging discussion and collaboration with SPMU. Okay, we will discuss about it later. With that, I would like to end this session, okay, for the Keynote 1 lecture with heartfelt thank you to everybody, to Prof. Rashad, to Prof. Hadaria, to all the committee, to everybody, and let us hope that this COVID-19 will be over soon and we will able to lead a normal life again. Right? With that, I would like to pass this session back to our MC, Miss Ernie. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you,
Bye.
Professor Dr. Farsha and Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Hamina. Ladies and gentlemen, moving right along, it is my greatest pleasure to invite our next moderator, Dr. Siti Hairia Hatta, to introduce to us Dr. Stephen Gilbert Compton, our second inspiring keynote speaker, all the way from United Kingdom.
Thank you, Miss MC. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to second session of keynote lecture for InBioSim 2020. I am Siti Khairiah Muhammad Hatta. It is my pleasure to be here as your moderator for this session. First of all, allow me to briefly explain about this session. Following the previous one, this session will also take about 1 hour. Our honorable speaker will talk about the selected topic for approximately 40 minutes, followed by a Q&A question. Should the audience have any question, please post your question in the chat room and we will try our best to attend to it at the end of the session. For your information, this session is broadcasting on at UiTM.fsg on YouTube and also via the official InBioSim 2020 link. Before the presentation begins, allow me to introduce our honorable speaker. The speaker is someone very dear to me. He was my PhD supervisor who had paved the way into the world of fixed swabs and the fix. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker is Dr. Stephen Gilbert Compton, a reader in entomology, Faculty of Biological Sciences, University of Leeds, United Kingdom. He graduated with a PhD in genetics from Hull University in 1983. He also a Sarchi Professor of Sustainable Agriculture at Rhodes University, South Africa. His research interests are in plant-animal interaction, including pollination and seed dispersal biology, chemical communication between plants and insects, biological control of weeds, and conservation of phytophagous insects. His vast experience in the field include African countries such as South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Asian countries, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, and not to be left out, European country, Norway, Spain, and United Kingdom itself. Some of his significant publications include fig trees and their associated animals, particularly the fig swabs that pollinate them. He has published more than 200 peer-reviewed research publications and many more to come, hopefully with me too. How are you, Dr. Compton?
I'm pretty good, thank you. And
How's
thanks
the
for
weather?
that introduction. It makes me feel a little old, but yeah, you are.
All right, it must be a struggle to wake up early in the middle of winter, yeah?
I've had a strong cup of coffee, which has helped.
All right, good. I would like to express our gratitude for you, Dr. Compton, for accepting our invitation to be a keynote speaker for InBioSim 2020. Dear viewers, allow me to give some background about the topic that will be shared today. Our speaker will be talking about ficus species. There are about 800 described species of ficus worldwide, where 102 of them are Malaysian species. Today, Dr. Compton will be talking about Ficus deltoidea and its pollinators. Locally, Ficus deltoidea is known as pokok mas cotek. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our speaker to deliver a presentation entitled The Unusual Biology of a Malaysian Epiphytic Fig Tree and its Pollinator. The session is yours, Dr. Compton.
Okay, well, thanks for that nice introduction. After the global significance of the topic described a few moments ago, my studies feel a little trivial, but thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of my passions, perhaps my major passion in life, and also a chance to talk about a species, although, as you said, I've maybe worked in a dozen or so countries. The particular fig tree and its pollinators that I'll be describing shortly are certainly amongst the most interesting that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. In this case, of course, to work with you on it. Okay, I will try to share my presentation now, and I will keep my fingers crossed. I'm going to share my screen now. Please be patient, it is connecting. Yes, the little wheel is going round to say, please be patient with me.
Yeah, it's okay, Steve. Sorry, Dr. Compton.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Yeah, it's loading now.
Okay, so I will switch to the PowerPoint and make a start. At least I thought I was. Try that one. There we go. So is that visible?
Can you make it in the slideshow, please, Dr. Compton?
Yeah, it is a slideshow this end.
Oh, yeah, it's slideshow now.
Okay, there's just a little bit of a time lag. Right then, so I'll make a start now, Kai. So thanks again for the invitation here, and I'll get underway. As you can see, this is very much a joint collaborative effort between myself at Leeds and also with Kai. She's the home team here. So I'm going to be talking then about one group of fig trees and the animals associated with them. And Malaysia is a very good place to be talking about this, because Malaysia is really at the center of distribution of this group of plants and the insects associated with them. This is one of those slides that introduces the topic and gives you an idea of what you'll be facing over the next 40 minutes or so. I'll briefly say a little bit about fig trees and their pollinators, because the unusual biology of the trees in general sets the scene for the particularly exceptional biology of this complex, this Ficus deltoidea complex. Just a few of those hundreds of species of fig trees. And in particular, I'll be talking about an epiphytic lifestyle and some of the evolutionary consequences that seem to have developed as a result of switching to living as a tree on other trees. Amongst the specific topics that I'll describe, the question of whether we're dealing with one species or lots of species, and I'll be arguing that actually we're dealing with quite a few species. And then I'll go into some slightly more general topics that deltoidea shows how exceptional it is, and particularly in terms of the dispersal of the pollinators. As you'll see, it seems to be unusually short distance. And then finally, I'll try to put this work into context a little by describing some of the work carried out in the oil palm plantations in West Malaysia. So, whoops, there we go. Fig trees are often described as keystone resources. In other words, they're ecologically important. And in the tropics, you could argue that they are as ecologically important as any other group of plants. And the reason for that is that just so many kinds of animals eat the mature fruits, eat the figs. Literally everything from ants to elephants. Doesn't have to be terrestrial, even fish feed on figs. So they are the base of a food web. And in recent years, it's been realized as well that the insects that are associated with the leaves, and particularly the figs themselves, the fig wasps that I'll be describing, they are in themselves an important source of food for birds at least, and probably for lizards and so on as well. So this is an ecologically important group of plants. I've said here at least 800 species. There's probably eventually we'll recognize around 1,000 species of fig trees distributed in the warmer parts of the globe, and at their highest diversity, perhaps in Malaysia. The most familiar fig trees maybe are like with this figure on the right here, this strangler fig. It's a hemiepiphyte. It starts life relatively briefly as an epiphyte from seeds germinating in the canopy, but it sends roots down, and once they reach the ground, the plant grows very quickly, and depending on the species, can eventually kill its host tree by strangling it, as in the picture here. I talked about the importance of figs for seed dispersing species, for frugivores, and these, as I've already said, are extremely diverse, linked in part to where the figs are produced. The figs can be under the ground, they can be on the trunks of the trees, or most commonly, they can be up in the canopy. But along with that great ecological significance of fig trees, from an evolutionary point of view, figs and fig wasps, their pollinators, have been studied because of they are a really good model system for co-evolution, the way in which plants and insects can evolve together. What defines figs, fig trees that is, are their unusual inflorescences that we call figs or syconia. They could be from the size of a pea up to the size of an orange, or even a little bigger than that. And they are weird inflorescences because when you look at them, you can't see any flowers. That's because the flowers are on the inside of these hollow balls. So here's one fig then, the flowers on the inside, and there'll typically be 100 or more flowers. And that means that the only way that pollen can get from one fig to another or one plant to another is through the entry of pollen through these little holes that we call osteoles. There's one per fig, and it needs very specialized animals to disperse that pollen, and those are the fig wasps. Fig wasps themselves are pretty strange looking organisms. The female here with the wings is perhaps a more typical looking insect, but much of her appearance is shaped by the need to crawl through that narrow osteole. So she has wings that break off when she crawls through the osteole. She has antennae that the plant cuts off when she crawls in. And she has a body that you can squash almost flat without killing her. In contrast, in the upper picture here, a male fig wasp they were originally thought to be ants. They spend effectively all their lives inside their figs. They don't have wings. They have tiny eyes. And altogether, they are very strange looking insects that really their only functions in life are to mate with the females and to chew holes through the figs to allow the females to escape. So in terms of pollination, what you have to imagine is that the insect initially is crawling around on the outer surface of the fig here. She then crawls through the osteole, losing her wings and part of her antennae. And the reason she goes in there isn't to pollinate. The reason she goes in there is to lay her eggs. And she will lay her eggs by using a long ovipositor and sticking that ovipositor down a style here. And once she's reached the ovule itself, this thing here, she will lay a single egg and she will gall the tissue. So she will stimulate plant development. Now, at the same time as she's doing that, she may actively release some pollen onto the stigmas as she's laying her eggs to ensure that her larvae are developing in pollinated flower. Alternatively, and this is the case with the pollinators of Deltoidea, she may just have been carrying pollen on the body surface, and that pollen just gets distributed and pollination occurs more or less accidentally. So here's one of those ovules. Here's the egg that's been laid. So she will have stuck her ovipositor down here, and once the ovipositor is inside, then she'll lay the little egg. And the reason for mentioning this is that one of the ways in which the specificity of the insects is maintained, and typically each species of fig wasp will only be associated with one species of fig tree. Part of the reason for that specificity is because she has to have an ovipositor that is long enough to reach inside the ovule down the length of the star here. If her ovipositor is too short, she cannot lay any eggs. Now, the relationship between fig trees and fig wasps is described as a mutualism because they benefit each other. But it isn't as simple as that for the majority of species in Asia, because there is a mutualism between male plants, but there is not a mutualism between female plants and the wasps. That's because when a wasp, if it's lucky, if it goes in the figs on a male tree, gets inside and the style lengths are all very short, it's easy to lay eggs. If she's unlucky and she enters a female fig like this one on the left, so they're the same species, but they look different because of these, the long styles of the flowers here. So if she goes into a female fig, it's a trap. She's had her wings removed and so on, but she can't lay any eggs. So yes, it's a mutualism at the level of species, but in the terms of individuals, the female plants are actually traps for the pollinators. So moving on to the specific study system that I'll be talking about today, Ficus deltoidea. I think for many listeners, the Mascotec here will be why they are familiar with Ficus deltoidea, this herbal tea. Indeed, the chemistry of Ficus deltoidea is the best known aspect of the biology of the species. And some of the work I'll be describing was carried out in Terengganu with the extensive collection of Ficus deltoidea complex plants that have been maintained there to study the chemistry. So it looks as if I've got lots of things to talk about today. I'm going to be asking whether there's just one species or lots. And those species are distributed around the Sunda Seas, so from Java to Thailand. They are all dioecious. They are true epiphytes in many cases, though it is facultative. They're not always epiphytes. And probably linked to being epiphytes, though it's hard to prove it, is the fact that they have exceptionally large seeds for a fig tree. Fig trees normally have hundreds of tiny seeds. Ficus deltoidea figs do things differently. And what that means is that the male and female figs are very, very different. And in terms of the evolution of eumutism, that puts constraints and novel selection on the interaction. Now, currently then, the varieties of deltoidea are all considered to be the same species. Even though as a zoologist, if I look at the leaves on the different plants, I find that very hard to believe. So here are some leaves then from some of the varieties of Ficus deltoidea. And to me, they look totally different. These are adult leaves. And the one labeled here at the bottom is Var angustifolia, which is the one we've studied most. And this is what the adult leaf looks like. But if you find a juvenile plant, its leaves will look more or less like this. And this variation with the age of the plants and also the presence of intermediates has been the reason why the botanists consider them currently as all one species and not multiple species. But what I'm going to be arguing is that biologically they are distinct species, or at least the ones that we've studied are. So this is Var angustifolia then that I'll be concentrating on. As an adult, it has these small leaves, has small figs about the size of a pea. If we have a look in detail at the figs themselves, you'll see just how different the male figs on the left are with the female figs on the right. So this male fig then, each of these brown little balls here, and you'll see some of them got a hole, that's where the larva of the wasp had developed, and then the next generation of wasps emerged from there. So there would have been maybe as many as 100 wasps came out, and then they, after mating, they crawl through all these male flowers, getting pollen on their bodies, and then they emerge to fly away to another younger fig where they could enter and lay their eggs. Contrast that with a female fig, which is, despite the apparent difference here, it's about the same size as the male fig. But you look in there and there's only 3 seeds. And this is the unique feature of the deltoidea complex, that they've switched from lots of small seeds to just a few big ones. In some varieties, just a single seed inside. So this picture is trying to illustrate this difference with a different variety. Here are here's a male fig down the bottom with these little flowers in that will have a developing wasp inside. And then at the same scale, here we have these huge seeds in comparison. So it's very unusual for fig trees. Now, what that means is that if a pollinator only enters a single fig, each individual pollinator, and that's a common picture within figs in general, then she'd be carrying in lots and lots of pollen grains, but would only have 1, 2, 3, 5 flowers to pollinate. That would be very inefficient use of the pollen, and fig trees are often pollen limited. So it seemed highly likely that the tree would want to have modified the behavior of the pollinators to allow each separate pollinator to come into a fig, pollinate it, and to move on to the next ones. And to test this suggestion, the experimental manipulations were carried out in the field. Here's Kai here doing experiments where individual females were put into groups of figs that were kept inside these bags, and then she could follow through the development of the figs and to see whether indeed a single pollinator could pollinate several of them. And these are some of her results. So frequency here on this axis, and this is the number of young figs that females entered. The grey bars are in the male plants, and the open bars in the female plants. And you could see quite a few of them just entered a single fig, some entered 2 figs, some entered 3 figs, some entered more than 4 or more figs. And you'll notice in this last group, the big difference between the female figs and the male figs. Presumably that's to do with the fact that when the wasp goes into a female fig, she can't lay any eggs. She eventually decides it's a waste of time being there and goes on to the next one. And of course, this is very good from the plant's point of view, and I haven't got time to talk about it, but the way that the plant is manipulating the behavior of the pollinator is achieved on the male plants and through the reproductive success that she has by moving between figs and laying eggs in several figs. Okay, how many species are we dealing with here? Well, as I said, the leaves look totally different to a zoologist like me. The figs vary greatly in size between these different varieties. And this would perhaps be expected this size difference would be expected to make it difficult or impossible for pollinator wasps that are associated with small figs, with varieties that have small figs, with varieties that have big figs, and should have the potential to prevent pollinators being associated with more than one variety, and so would result in biologically distinct species within the complex. So, is that true? Well, if we look at the actual numbers of flowers and seeds in 3 example Malaysian varieties, here's the very small figs of angustifolia, and then Gunaan has much bigger figs with many more flowers in the female. I say many more, it's still only 25 compared with 5 or so in angustifolia. And you can see in terms of numbers of seeds, which are the solid bars, that the bigger figs do translate to having more seeds, but the efficiency, the difference between the 2 bars, does decline in those bigger figs. And interestingly, when you look in the male figs where the wasp can have offspring, you see how many flowers in Trenganuensis, 800 female flowers in there compared with 150 or so. So many, many more flowers in those big figs of Trenganuensis, but a much lower efficiency in terms of utilization, in terms of the number of wasps that come out from it. But still, it's 200 wasps on average coming out. Here's what those wasps look like. Here's the male, this strange creature. Here's the much more normal looking female. Look at the scale bars. These are extremely small, even for fig wasps. As I mentioned already, the fig wasp females have to have ovipositors long enough to reach down the styles of the male flowers. Sorry, of the female flowers of the male figs. And we can check on that by measuring the ovipositors. So on the left here, we have a wasp that's been smashed open, and we can measure the length of the ovipositor and then compare it with the lengths of the styles of its hosts. If we look in a female fig, and remember they cannot breed in those female figs, the styles are over a millimetre long, twice the length of the ovipositor. So there's no way that the wasp can actually stick its ovipositor there and lay its eggs there. In contrast, in a male fig, those styles are very short, and she can easily lay her eggs. And when you look at these style lengths in male figs across a range of varieties, there's effectively no difference at all. So that big variation in size between the different varieties of Daltoidia is achieved by varying the numbers of flowers inside, not by the size of those flowers. And that means that structurally, if female wasps went inside the figs of an atypical variety, she should still be able to lay her eggs. So style lengths are not controlling pollen flow in these varieties. So there is potential for cross-pollination based on their style lengths then. But that's only true if they actually go inside the figs of different varieties and spread the pollen between different varieties. And we also look to see if that's true or not, that they actually are attracted to different varieties or only to the variety that they normally breed in. And this specificity of behavior is achieved by having stage and species-specific volatile blends that come from the ostiole at the time when the fig wants to be pollinated. And you can do very simple experiments to show this. It's an old side from some work in Africa where we just put sticky traps on broom handles next to bags that we put figs of different species in. And you can have control bags that have no figs. You can have different species of figs and so on. And this is the results on day one from a sticky trap that was next to a bag that had figs in. Each one of those dots is a fig wasp. It was mass slaughter. And here's a control bag nearby that didn't have figs inside. And you can see it caught some because the wasps were just flying around, but far, far fewer. On the second day, there were less wasps around, but there's still far more trapped on the sticky traps associated with the figs. So doing this very simple experiment, then, you could show that the chemicals, attractant volatiles released by the plants were stage specific, just when the tree wants to be pollinated, and also they are species specific. And these kind of results have been repeated many times all over the place. So if the different varieties of Daltoidea are actually different species, then we would expect the wasps to only fly and be attracted to the figs of their own particular variety and not the other varieties. And for the first time, really, nobody's ever attempted this kind of experiment before outside. What we did was to collect figs from that germplasm collection, move them across the country to oil palm plantations,
We lost the voice. I can't hear anything.
Dr. Stephen, are you with us?
We can't hear you.
Variety they're normally associated with, they only pollinate. So gene flow between varieties then, at least in the case of the wasps coming from Vara angustifolia, is absolutely limited to its normal host. Excuse me. If we look at the equivalent data on the female trees, it's the same pattern. The black area, the pollinated figs, were only on the female plants of Vara angustifolia, so the wasps are just going to their normal host. You'll notice far few of them were pollinated and compared with the male, and this is a pattern that we found in some other experiments as well. And if you think about it, you perhaps shouldn't be too surprised that the wasps seem to be more attracted to the male figs because the female figs are traps, and it's only the wasps that go to a male plant that have any chance of reproducing. So pollinators of one variety seem to prefer it over others. And then the figs of the male plants seem to be preferred over those on the female plants. So that's all well and good. But what we were also interested in was whether the ease with which the wasps could move over long distances, because that will influence the chances of the wasp actually encountering figs of different varieties that are not their usual hosts. So I'm going to step back a bit from deltoideae now to say something about dispersal in fig wasps in general, because again it's rather special and it's a chance for me to describe some studies outside Malaysia. So here's a fly. Here's a fig wasp. She happens to be an African fig wasp, and a relatively big one. She's about twice the size of the ones associated with deltoida. She's a full 2 millimeters long. And so she's short-lived. Okay, I'll take a step back and I'll perhaps slightly correct what you said. So within a single variety, the male figs and the female figs are the same size. It's important for them to do that because if the female figs were much bigger, then it would make it easy for the wasps to know they are female figs and to avoid them. So we think that there is selection for the male figs and the female figs to mimic each other, both in terms of the chemistry of the volatiles, but also in the size of them. So, but nonetheless, it looks as if the mimicry isn't perfect, and some of the wasps still go to the female trees, even though that means that they won't be able to have any offspring. Does that clear things up a little?
Yes, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Smida, for the question. So, if there anyone to ask any more question?
Can I ask some questions?
Yes, please. Who's speaking?
My name is Siti Nurhaja from Fakulti Plantation and Agrotechnology.
Yes, Dr. Siti. Please.
Okay, I would like to ask Dr. Compton about your suggestions on the fixed trees in our palm plantation. Actually, I will be presenting my papers this afternoon on the effect of pesticide spraying. On palm. Is it can this pollinate if we plant figs in our palm plantations, they also will have facing the same cases with our pollinator weevils. And since now the populations of weevils is decreasing because of the pesticide spraying in our palms, do you think our pollinators can survive? Our pollinators.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it sounds a very interesting work there. You're looking at. Could you? It'll help me to answer the question. If you say which kinds of pollinators you are looking at.
I think the weevil, right? Elidobulus cameronicus.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, correct. Elidobulus cameronicus, pollinator weevil.
Are you looking at bees and so on, or what?
It's the pollinator for the oil palm, Dr. Compton.
Oh, sorry. Okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
I think the questioner will know much more about that subject than I do, to be honest. But it's obviously timing of sprays, the choice of the correct sprays, the application of the sprays. All those factors are going to. How damaging the insecticide sprays are going to be, and in terms of the specific things that we work on with the fig wasps, because they are developing inside the figs, they are probably relatively immune to contact sprays, and I would imagine that. Again, it depends on the timing of sprays and the intensity, obviously, but it would be an interesting question to find out just how important an impact that the sprays would have. But as I say, my guess would be that that the wasps themselves may be relatively immune, simply because for most of their lives they're actually inside the plant. Obviously, if systemic insecticides were used, then it would be a different story.
Does this answer your question, Dr. Siti?
Yes, thank you. Can I have another question?
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
I mean, I know there are studies on the effects of climate change, especially on rainfall or temperatures to the populations of the pollinator wasps of the figs specifically?
Yes, it's the Richard Corlett group in
climate change.
in China have done some experiments with that, and to a limited extent, we have too. Once the wasps are inside the figs and they are developing, pretty immune to high temperatures because the figs themselves help moderate the temperature. But outside the figs, when the wasps are flying between trees, they are very susceptible to elevated temperatures. And Corlett's group's work suggests that that climate change has the potential to be a problem for some of these species. But at the same time, I would argue that the behavior of the wasps, behavior of insects in general, will often moderate kind of gross climatic effects, perhaps by flying, by only emerging, when it's a little cooler, perhaps. Some of these species fly at night and will be immune from elevated temperatures due to climate change. So in conclusion, yes, based on laboratory studies, climate change has the potential to be damaging. Whether that damage can be reduced due to behavioral changes of the wasps is something we can only guess at.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hajar, for a interesting question. Is there any more question from the viewers? All right, so that was absolutely a fruitful discussion we had there with Dr. Compton. We would like to thank you for virtually being with us and sharing many interesting questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end of the presentation. Once again, we would like to thank Dr. Compton for his informative and interesting talk, and not to forget our audience for your active participation. We truly appreciate your time and effort for InBioSim 2020. Hopefully, the presentation will be useful and beneficial for everybody. Thank you for your attention. With that, I will pass this session back to our MC. Good afternoon and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hello? Thank you, Dr. Compton and Dr. Siti Haira Hatta. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have found this morning's presentation informative and inspiring. I would like to get everyone's cooperation to switch on your respective cameras in order for us to snapshot a group photo of all speakers and participants. We are still waiting for all participants to switch on your camera, please. I'm sorry. I hope everyone will bear with me for a short while. We're still trying to get all participants and speakers to switch on their camera so that we can have a group photo. Dr. Stephen, I'm sorry, but can you switch on your camera, please, Dr. Stephen, so we can see we can get a photo of us all together.
Sorry about that. I switched it off accidentally.
Can I have Suhaila and Amaliawati to switch on your your cameras as well, please?
Sorry, Dr. Elni, mine is not working, the video. I tried to start it later. Sorry.
One more minute, yeah, please. It is my pleasure to announce that we have reached the end of the morning session for the symposium. We will continue our symposium at 2 o'clock in our respective parallel sessions. We will have 2 virtual rooms for environmental sciences and biodiversity, 2 virtual rooms for microbiology and biochemistry, 1 virtual room for biomedical and health sciences, and 1 virtual room for molecular biology and bioinformatics. You will be assigned automatically to the respective parallel sessions. Please do not leave this meeting platform as we use the same link to create the parallel sessions. If you have accidentally exited the meeting platform, please rejoin our meet at least 15 minutes before the next session begins. With that, I hope you have enjoyed the program so far and continue to be enlightened by the following programs that we have lined up for the rest of the event. Thank you for your cooperation and attention, and we will meet again at 2 p.m. in the respective virtual room.